I don't remember exactly when it started, only that one minute I was whole and the next I was holed. My lower leg at first, nickel-sized cavity straight through, could see muscle and sinews, tangled, throbbing veins doing their work. It didn't hurt, that was the thing. Could stick a finger in there, rustle it all around, nothing. Later, I found another, outer left bicep, like a defensive wound against an amateur archer. They were circular, nearly perfectly so, with no signs of tearing or stress. The skin and bone, at one time healthy, had just simply melted through. I had no evidence of an unseen hole punch operated by the man himself, but I dared not strike the possibility. By the time I had convinced myself that these were not natural sinkholes of flesh and made an appointment with a doctor who might have some idea of how to deal with spontaneous body craters, I had no fewer than 4 new portals in me, express passages from the front to the back, or back to the front depending on your orientation. The doctors, well-meaning idiots, had few answers for my sudden condition. Diabetes, one suggested, emphysema, another, whooping cough, liver fluke, spot flies. I left each appointment with a new reason to fear fate and another prescription for anti-inflammatories. Weeks passed, and eventually I dismissed medicine entirely. This malady seemed largely innocuous after all, and each day I found a new use for extra holes. I could hang my keys through the saucer-sized gap in my shoulder. When it rained, I had a convenient place to hook my umbrella while indoors. At parties, I could thread a scarf through my lower abdomen and then up through my chest plate, much to the delight of the women folk. That's not to say I was content. I tried to pack the holes as they cropped up. Plaster never worked well enough, nor did adhesive foam. I had some success with cork, but made me feel too much like those pop guns you buy at the state fair. I will tell you that cooked ham is a poor substitute for flesh and bone, but I will not tell you how I know that. Some 2 months passed before I resigned myself to my condition. By that time, I had holes covering 60% of my body, and my shadow looked like a cheese grater against the grass. Eventually, as most things do, they stopped. By the end, I had 38 additional holes in my body. I was buckshot, and when the wind picked up, it howled through me. You know that old adage, you make a better door than a window? Yeah, that didn't apply to me. But I soon realized that while the holes had stopped forming anew, the ones already taken up residence were expanding. All at once, I was expanding, really. My skin stretched and I grew some 2 feet taller each day. I could surround my mother, wrapping her around like a crepe, and could finally reach all the discarded toys thrown onto the roof when I was younger. I kept growing, or rather the holes kept swelling. My whole form was enlarging, slightly bigger with each passing day. After a few days, I could trim the higher branches of the elm behind our house. After a week, I started to sleep in a soccer field behind a church, curling up with a layer of sod that hadn't yet taken root. By the end of that final month, I could no longer see my parents or my house or differentiate my street from any other line in the grass, all green tiles and grout cut into perfect squares. I had to say goodbye to those I loved. Before I had grown too large to hear their voices, I said farewell to my parents. There were tears and laughter and regrets made known. I made peace with my brother, told him that I forgave him for that thing we promised never to tell anyone, and that my haunts were now his too. I said goodbye to a certain girl, the specifics of which aren't fit for retelling here. And I grow still. I've long since left the atmosphere, gliding effortlessly above the clouds, like a stretched thin balloon drifting on top of the earth, staring down at the green and blue mosaic rolling beneath. Sometimes I catch a glint and think it's a stork or an Airbus or some hopelessly lost paraglider praying for a soft way down. But there is no distinction in the colors, in the flashing light and dark streaks of watercolor smudges below. I believe that eventually I will have stretched wide enough to engulf the planet within me, to encompass and encircle those I've loved and who've loved me, that at some point I will be in all places at once, feeling the magnetic pulse of the world against my sunken, unshaven chin.